Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 18 of CANNAfact Friday. I'm so excited to be here. We were not here last week because it was a holiday weekend and we were both traveling. So we're going to make it extra long and extra special this time. Just kidding. It's still the same regular length, 45 minutes. We're cramming a lot of insights and a lot of exciting things into these 45 minutes. My name is Adriana Hemans. I'm the VP of Demand at ISA, which is an insights firm based in LA. We specialize in all types of insights and consumer data, and cannabis is one of the areas that we focus on, and also an area that I'm absolutely obsessed with. I'm joined today by my co-host, David Pawschuk, who is the best-selling author of the first book about cannabis branding called Branding Bud. If you work in cannabis and you have anything to do with branding and you haven't read David's book, do yourself a favor and go out and buy it this weekend. So yeah, how are you today, David? Excited to be here.
I'm doing well. Thank you for that, Adriana. Yeah, it's God. We were not here last weekend because of the holiday, and the previous Friday we were in New York because of MJN Pack, where we did something live and quick. But it's great to be back. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here with the audience and with you. And for those of you that don't know what Adriana does at ISA is the VP of Strategy. She works with other companies, and she works with various companies to help them understand trends in the marketplace. And what we do together is the same thing, but in the cannabis space. And what we do every Friday are bring folks together and experts together to talk about topics. And today we have a really exciting topic we're going to chat about. We'll get to that in a moment. But let's get to some of the nitty gritty here. So we have our chat bar on the right side of your screen, and what we always ask is that you participate, the audience, and you ask questions. So we're here to have an active live conversation.
Happy Friday, Cheryl. Thanks for commenting.
Yes. So with that, you know the chat, you know we're live. We bring in experts to talk about some of the trends. Today we've got some interesting trends that we're going to talk about. And Adriana, do you want to take it over from there?
Yeah, I think we have a pretty lively group today. We have 79 people who registered, so we should be having a pretty robust chat in our chat window today. Before we jump into our guest and our topic, which is a very exciting, salacious, interesting, risque topic for this week, briefly just want to mention what we have a speaking engagement coming up, a live speaking engagement coming up. David and I will be on stage next week on Saturday, June 11th in Chicago for NECANN at the Illinois Cannabis Convention. We'll be talking about the trends that we've seen over the last 2 years, and we call it harnessing a perfect storm. Basically all of these societal and behavioral shifts that came together to create the cannabis industry that we know today, and how brands can capitalize on those opportunities. Yep. So it should be a good one.
Absolutely. And we'll be joined by Sparky Rose and Allison Disney as well, experts in the cannabis space and branding space and consumer packaged goods space. So I'm excited. Can't believe that's a week away.
I know, right? So yeah, if anyone's going to be in Chicago, hit us up and let's party down at NECANN.
Right on. All right. And now for today's show.
Today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Katie Enright. She is the founder and CEO of a brand called Lavinia. And what Lavinia does is it's a THC infused topical that their mission is to enhance sexual power, empower exploration, and openly discuss topics surrounding sex. Katie developed this product in her home and then started sharing it with friends and then friends of friends. And now today, the whole state of California. Welcome, Katie.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey,
Thanks
Katie.
for joining us.
So just so I get this right, today we're talking about cannabis and sex?
Yes. Two of the most taboo issues or subjects currently.
Mm-hmm. I just feel so grateful that we're at this point in the evolution of our society and our culture where we can talk about these things, not only publicly, but on LinkedIn, which is, of course, a professional networking platform. But it's also like, hey, let's bring these issues to light, these things that don't always get talked about, but probably really should be talked about.
Absolutely.
And thanks for the comment, Michael Joseph. Much love and gratitude. Fantastic she has this brand. Thanks for the comment, Michael.
And one of his best products. We have a fan in the audience, I think.
Yay!
Well, just before we jump in, we talk about cannabis every week, and we try to normalize cannabis, and we try to have open, honest conversations, right? And I think it's important to do the same relative to sex. There are topics that people need to talk about, and for some reason they fear talking about them. So let's talk about it.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. And
Right.
we have another comment. Sorry, I just have to add this in. I had a customer pay me to keep my store open for lube on his honeymoon.
I love that.
Well, I think maybe we should just park it right here and listen to everybody's comments.
Right? I told you it was going to be a spicy chat today. But
All right.
let's get our first stat up, shall we?
Yeah, let's get this party started. So, normally this is a game every week we call CANNAfact or CANNAfiction. Today, I'm going to change this game to CANNAfact or CANNAfriction. Sorry about that. I hope people are wow. Okay, so with that said, our first CANNAfact or CANNAfiction slide. 20% of the cannabis consumers we polled told us they use cannabis products to enhance a sexual experience. So while we're curious to hear what the audience thinks about that, certainly we have a handful already of folks basically agreeing with that. But let's see. I know that I'm curious to hear what the audience has to say, and just so everybody knows, we've taken a poll with over 1,018 interviews of U.S. cannabis consumers, 21 plus, who have consumed cannabis in the past 3 months. And this was fielded September of 2020 through October of 2020. So what's everybody's thoughts on that? 20% of cannabis consumers polled told us they use cannabis products to enhance a sexual experience.
Feel free to drop your guess in the chat. You have a 50% chance of getting it right. It's either a CANNAfact or CANNAfiction. And I should mention too that this is all cannabis products, not just topicals. So it covers everything: edibles, flour, pre-rolls, gummies. 20% said that they use a cannabis product to enhance a sexual experience. Aaron says CANNAfriction. I would think higher. We're getting a lot of fiction guesses in here. All right, we have 2 facts and 3 fictions. Ron Gray says 20% seems about right. I would think very, very few are using it for lubricants, very small market.
There it is. Someone got the friction joke. Thank you, Jamie.
And while we're waiting for a couple more guesses to roll in, I have to give a shout out to Jamie Quieter, who I know is in our audience and just commented on our pun, that she made me laugh so hard this morning when she told the story about how her son, whose name is Jace, asked her if she used to churn butter when she was a kid. I had to laugh. She's like 35, by the way. Hilarious. We have a comment from Cheryl Moore. I'm a professional chef and cultivator. We create organic lotions, creams, flowers, capsules, and even suppositories. Interesting. A lot of diversity in product types there.
Right on. Well, I'm curious, but before we jump to the answer, Katie, what's your thought?
I would say it is. I'm going to say fact.
Okay, CANNAfact. Well,
I say CANNAfact.
And the answer
All right, let's try it. I mean, let's try it. Let's reveal the answer.
All right. Well, 20% of the cannabis consumers we polled told us they use cannabis products to enhance the sexual experience. So it's interesting, 20%, so it is a fact. And we could see other things. For pain relief, it's 64%. To relax or have fun, I don't know, that's sort of falls into a sexual experience for me. But to relieve stress, same thing. They all are very interconnected. To help me sleep or to give me energy. But specifically, 20% said to enhance the sexual experience.
Yeah, we had a pretty divided audience on that one, which makes me think it was a good CANNAfact or CANNAfiction question. And again, this was for all products. So some people are like smoking flower to help them relax and get in the mood, or potentially using a topical or any other type of product to enhance their experience. So question for you, Katie, related to this topic. I know because of your brand and you have to spend all day talking about sex. You don't have to, but you get to. How do you, in your experience, how do people sort of discover that cannabis can be used for this purpose? Is it something that they sort of stumble upon, or are they like looking for answers to this? How do they figure out that it has these sexual health benefits?
Well, I think that's why the statistic is so low, is people just don't know. I know I certainly didn't know. I developed this product completely by accident. I was training for my second marathon, and in my first marathon, I injured myself terribly. I had an awful time recovering. And so for my second marathon, I was determined to put a lot of time and effort and energy and research into recovery. And I started to research cannabis. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm so sad I didn't do this for my first marathon. And I started to make balms just for myself, for my back and knee and anything that was aching. And for a marathon, you're training an hour and a half is your easiest day. And I read somewhere as I was making these balms, I was watching YouTube videos trying to figure out how to do the perfect formulation. And I read that you could use it as a sexual enhancing experience. And I was like, what? That seems crazy. And I tried it. And the balms that I was using coconut oil, because coconut oil is really easy to work with. But coconut oil isn't a great lubricant. It's not condom compatible, and it actually can cause yeast infections. So I used it, and I liked the heightened effect of the cannabis, but I didn't like the coconut oil. So I literally went to a dispensary the next day in search of a product that would enhance my sexual experience that wasn't coconut oil based. And I literally couldn't find it. It didn't exist. And so that's kind of why I started the company, just because I wanted to be a consumer. And that's how it came about. But I think this statistic would be a lot higher if people knew about it. And also the challenge that I think we'll probably talk about a little bit later is that people typically don't come to dispensaries to buy a lubricant, right? Like you go to a sex shop or CVS or Target, or you order it online. And so it's about educating people that those products are available in dispensaries as well.
I love that story. And I think I really connect with that like entrepreneur's journey, that what you wanted and needed didn't exist in the market. So you created it yourself. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Katie, you kind of hit the nail on the head, which is people don't normally go into a cannabis dispensary to purchase, sex lube. Um, so what's that discovery process like? Do they just happen to continue down the counter and they're like, oh wow, or are people somehow linking sex and cannabis together?
For us, it's about having a pretty solid in-store presence. That's kind of what we're trying to do, is trying to capture customers that are currently coming into dispensaries, and then also trying to advertise and market and drive people to dispensaries. But that is a challenge, because educating people that all of these products are out there. Especially suppositories are a great line, and the product is so much more effective with cannabis. So that's why we use the cannabis, because it's a night and day difference. But that is a pretty huge challenge for us, is the route of distribution and
And just
capturing
right, brand awareness.
custom. Yeah, exactly. And brand awareness, in simple facts of like, we're not even allowed to be on Instagram. So we can't even build brand awareness on Instagram. I mean, we can have our personal page, but like we can't do sponsored ads. We can't advertise. We have to be able to guarantee, because we're working in sex and we're working in cannabis. So there's so many restrictions based in just cannabis that we have to adhere to. And then also, because we're a sexual based product, we have to adhere to um, all of these other guidelines. It's really frustrating, actually, because it really is, it's very difficult. And then also, we can only distribute state by state. because we have to, because it is cannabis based. So there are a lot of limitations, which is too bad because this product is so amazing and so effective and can help so many people have really great, intense orgasms.
You know, segueing from that last thought, you mentioned coconut oil earlier, and I see there's a comment up as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but um, coconut oil and latex do not work well together, do they? Or do they not?
Correct. They are not compatible. Coconut oil has all the buzzwords. It's organic. It's vegan. It's kind of like a really hot topic. People use it to whiten their teeth. People use it as moisturizer. It's very trendy, but it's not good as a personal lubricant. It kills good bacteria. Yeast can rise as a result, which can result in a yeast infection, and it's also not condom compatible.
Right.
So if you're using coconut oil and you love it and it's for you and it goes along with your lifestyle, fantastic, keep using it. But for me, it doesn't work. And for a lot of other people, it doesn't work as well.
Coconut oil is like the kale of the oil industry.
Yeah, yeah,
I just want to
exactly.
address really quickly something that Ron commented about. 40% of people saying that they were consuming for recreation or for fun. And Ron, what we have seen sort of a big fluctuation in that. So this poll was done in September of 2020, where a lot of the stated reasons for people consuming were because they were having anxiety and trouble sleeping. It was sort of in that era when the uncertainty around COVID was really weighing on people's minds. So we saw like anxiety and stress really rise up. And now it's sort of leveled off, and we see like more closer to like 60 or 70% of people answering this question saying that it's for fun and recreation. So just wanted to respond to your comment there.
Thank you, Adriana. I saw
I
that
love
too.
all of these the active interactions we have today.
Yeah, and it sort of brings us back, and I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later about advocating for for both sexual awareness and sexual openness, as well as I guess the normalization and acceptance of both sexuality and cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those are pretty different. Overlaid, they're even more so.
Yeah.
Should we get to?
Let's talk about our next CANNAfact or CANNAfiction question. Our next stat we want to throw up there. This one is related to the formulation itself, the ratio of CBD to THC. This poll was conducted in, sorry, let me pull up my notes, in January of 2021, January 7th to January 14th, with 553 people participating. And we were talking specifically to topicals users. We asked them, what is your preferred ratio? And we gave them a battery of different answer choices, ranging from 1-to-1, 2-to-1 CBD to THC, all the way up to 20-to-1. So the question is, CANNAfact or CANNAfiction, the most preferred ratio is 1-to-1. So we'll see what the audience thinks. We'll see if we're able to stump you with this one.
Yeah.
I should mention too, this is not for sexual lubricants. It's just for topicals generally, which I think, and maybe we can sort of segue into that while we're letting people answer. It would be a different ratio that people would probably be looking for if it was for a sexual occasion. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Our formulation, we spent about a year and a half in R&D, and we did about 25 different formulations. I hired a PhD chemist. I call him the Walter White of weed. He's amazing. And we tried everything because we weren't really sure. The thing about linking cannabis and sex is it's such a new, I want to say industry, but it's not really industry in itself, but it's such a new kind of trend or topic that there isn't much research. So we're kind of paving the way in a lot of in a lot of different ways. We're working on some anal sex products that, like, literally medical journals. I've been researching anal sex and cannabis, and there's literally zero research. So we're conducting it ourselves. And we tried every different variation. We did high only THC. We did only CBD. We did every derivative you could think of, and we found what we like to call the most orgasmic mix of THC and CBD, and it is a 2-to-1 with THC being the higher portion.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And tell us about that. Is that more of a heady effect and slightly less of a body effect?
No, so there's no heady unless you consume it sublingually. So unless you go down on somebody when they're wearing it, you actually won't receive a head high at all. What it does is vasodilation happens, and what that means is that the size of the blood vessel is increasing and blood flow is increasing, and that's what the cannabis element does. So it's actually kind of very simple almost, in that it just increases blood flow, and anytime that you have increased blood flow, especially in that region, that's how you have really strong, really intense orgasms. That's how men get erections, and increased blood flow is a very good thing. But yes, you don't, and especially men. So men can use it anally and have the enhanced effect of the cannabis, and it does break the blood barrier if you use it anally. So you will get a little bit of a head high as well. But penis is skin, and so actually transdermally it doesn't absorb. So it's kind of interesting because 9 times out of 10 men say that they also have a heightened experience from this product. But really, I think it's in direct relationship to the woman having such an intense experience, and also the pulsing of the vaginal walls is so much more intense that they have a heightened experience because of that.
Interesting. I'm so curious, Katie, what made you decide that now is the right time to journey into creating an anal lube?
I almost said I love anal, but there because I think this product could be really helpful. I know I personally struggle having an orgasm anally, and with the cannabis products that I'm working on, I absolutely can. And it's just, I think that it's an underserved market. Again, kind of how I started the lubricant. I just want it myself as a product. I want to be a consumer, and it doesn't exist, so I'm going to create it.
And how is it different? Like, how did you have to adjust the formula? Or maybe this is still in the R&D phase at this point?
It is. Yeah, we're still in the R&D phase. So we're kind of doing exactly what we did with the lube. We're trying everything. And then we have like a beta testing group. And then based on the feedback we receive from them, we'll come up with our final formulation. But it's really fun. The R&D stage is really fun because it's, like I said, it's such a taboo thing that people don't really talk about, that it's really fun to have conversations with people, because especially one-on-one, people are very open and candid and honest about their experiences, which is fun to have because people typically are very closed off about sex.
Yeah.
And sometimes cannabis even.
And cannabis research in general, that there is a hesitancy in the beginning to be really open about, your rituals and your habits and your spending, just because it's not something that people are used to talking about with strangers. But
Yep.
once you sort of get them to open up a little bit, they will tell you probably more than you ever wanted to know. But it's very rewarding to like hear these personal stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And also how we're helping people too. I mean, the statistic of women that don't have orgasms. I think I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and I don't know if it's 100% true, so maybe I shouldn't say it, but she was saying that like 10 to 15% of women die without ever having an orgasm. 10 to 15%
That is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
female. I know. And it's because sometimes it just feels good, and you're like, this feels good. I think maybe this is it. And if you don't have the experience to truly know, it's very funny.
We'll take a look and just dig up that research and see if we'll make that our next CANNAfact or CANNAfiction question.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure. It sounds probably about right, but I don't know.
Very sad all of a sudden. That made me very sad. But
so we have a few guesses here. Mostly looks like about half and half, actually. Half and half, half guessed fiction and half guessed fact. So let's reveal the answer. It is CANNAfiction. So the most preferred ratio, according to the consumers that we polled back in 2021, told us when it comes to topicals specifically, and this is not a sexual lubricant, but just topicals, they prefer 4 CBD to 1 THC. 5 to 1 was a close second, and then 10 to 1. So what we're seeing here, I think, is people saying they really are interested in the benefits of the CBD, and they're not necessarily interested in having a high dose of THC, but they definitely want it to be part of the formulation. Looks like we had a couple stumps and a couple no stumps.
Yeah, it's interesting too, Adriana. We were both in New York recently. I brought a topical to my sister who's suffering from cancer, and that was a 40 to 1, 40 CBD to 1. So it's just interesting to see that those products are even on the market and who they're catering to.
Yeah, I didn't even know that they made that that ratio. Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
We have a question from Pam. Can you share the clinical data on circulating cannabinoid levels with vaginal and anal suppositories? We have attempted to do these blood tests, but were denied IRB approval. Would be very interested as the pharma literature is also limited. Sounds like there is a really strong need for this.
Yeah, interesting. So the clinical data that I've researched, there really isn't any, especially with anal suppositories. There literally is nothing. So what we did for ours is there's a vibrator called the Lioness that has sensors on the side that records the pulsing of the vaginal walls during a sexual experience. So we actually can have data based on orgasms, and I can kind of show you. And so this is with the unmedicated. This is just a water-based lubricant, and then this is with our high cannabis lubricant. And so you can see that the vibrator is recording the pulsing, so you can see how much more intense it makes it. And so we were able to use this data to help with our formulation, because when we did like only THC or only CBD or whatever, we were able to actually have a graph that can show what's happening. I mean, obviously, every sexual situation is different. Your dog barks at just the wrong time, your phone rings. There's so many different components that go into it, but that's how we were able to get our data and come up with our formulation.
Responding to your comment, Ron, yes, this is a nationwide survey, not California. It's all US wide. But yeah, I love that chart, and I love that you have it framed. I'm going to start framing my charts too. How did you figure out that that was the best way to test?
Every sexual situation is different, like I said, and it's really hard to quantify after the fact a sexual situation and also orgasms and how intense they are. So I think I read about this vibrator, and I bought one and I tried it. They're a little bit expensive. I think it's like $200 or $250, which actually is kind of a little high for the market, but reasonable. And I tried it and I was just fascinated by the data, because you can use it anally as well. So you can receive anal data on anal orgasms, which is insane. Again, this has never been done before. So it's kind of, when you pave the way, you just do everything and make mistakes and then get data and hope it sticks.
And it's intriguing because it's what the metrics are too, right? Like picking and choosing the right metrics are really important. I'm also thinking too, is there any brainwave activity that's monitored? Because it's not only, I mean, orgasms are not only physical, they're mental as well.
Absolutely. And cannabis can enhance that as well, right? Cannabis can help put us in our body and take us out of our mind, can help with performance anxiety, especially smoking or doing gummies. I know I have a lot of friends that take gummies every time they're about to have sex, and they just love it. Clinical studies are very expensive to do. So we haven't personally done any clinical studies about brainwaves or anything like that. We've just kind of done our own in-house research, vaginally speaking, what happens vaginally when you're having an orgasm. But it's really helpful because people, it's really helpful to see data to understand how it works. Like it is, you know, a scientific based thing. Vasodilation happens. It's going to happen. It doesn't, it's impossible to smoke weed and not get high. You know, I mean, if you're, if you're smoking the right, you know, kind, I guess. But anyways, yeah, so it's, what was I going to say? I was saying something and then I just lost my train of thought.
Using data to tell a story about the efficacy. And that's something that we do a lot at ISA is product testing and claims testing for cannabis and non-cannabis brands. And we've even done some odd ones that were like for like feminine products and things that you would use in the shower. So that's getting into like the nitty gritty and the super personal is something that we have in common, Katie.
I love that. Yeah, having data is so important, and being able to show people data and say like, hey, this could be your orgasm, but this could also be your orgasm. There is an onset time to our product. If you have to leave it on 15 minutes to a half hour in order for the vasodilation to happen. So if you don't leave it on long enough, you're just going to experience the green orgasm. You're not going to experience the heightened effect of the cannabis. So that is really important to know because it is a lubricant. People are like, I know how to use lube, and they put it on and then have their experience and then don't have a significant difference. That's why.
You heard it here on CANNAfact Friday. Always read your label.
Yes. Amen.
And Katie, I can't help but to ask, you know, will your product be sold outside of cannabis dispensaries and cannabis stores? It just seems, like again, I guess it's about the, you know, I'm thinking about all the people that are missing out on this because maybe they're not cannabis friendly. And even though cannabis is a major component of your product, it's a conundrum almost, right? You're very limited in who and how you could approach your consumer.
Yeah, it's a conundrum upon a conundrum upon a conundrum in that it's can only be sold in dispensaries in the state of California. People don't typically go to dispensaries to buy a lubricant. So it's kind of like that in and of itself is a challenge. But then on top of that, exactly when we do our marketing and our advertising, it's only available in the state of California. The thing is the product is much more effective with cannabis, but we are looking into doing some kind of hemp derived variation just because then we can't do, I mean, our route of distribution is just so much more and you can get it into so many more people's hands. For me, it's really about the quality of the product. So like I said, for our lubricant, we spent 1.5 years in R&D. And so for our hemp, you know, we're currently doing some R&D for it, and we just want to make sure that we enter the market with the best product available and that it really works, and that we also have the data to prove it. But distribution is a big challenge for us.
Is that the biggest hurdle, do you think, Katie, in people
Yeah.
discovering infused lubricants?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even if we drive people to, you know, we're looking into like advertising in sex shops and driving people to the dispensaries. There's just so many, you know, the click through is like 3 different steps before they can buy your product. Luckily, we're on a great Good Tree, which is a delivery platform that delivers to most of the state of California. So that way people can have it delivered and things like that. But that is, I mean, I think that this is like every brand in the cannabis industry has this challenge, unless you're a flower brand, in which case, you know, people are going to dispensaries specifically to buy your product. But that is a huge challenge, and I'm hoping with the legalization, hopefully that will someday come, this climate will change a bit and make it easier for brands to
And we'll see
distribute.
Lavinia in the pleasure chest in West Hollywood.
Yeah, that's actually my goal. I love the Pleasure Chest also teaches great classes. They teach like how to give great blowjobs and hand jobs and all ABCs of anal. They
Perfect
have
place
a lot
for
of,
Lavinia.
yeah.
We have a
educational.
comment from Vignesh from India. Welcome, Vignesh. His question is, are lubricants more effective than consumables, or are they both different, unique experiences? Would love to connect with you guys about our brand in India, Wildleaf. Any
Super
thoughts
fun.
on that?
Hello. Yeah, it's a completely different experience. So an edible will get you a head high. That's great for performance anxiety. It's also will sometimes give you a little bit of a body sensation as well, depending on what you're consuming. Whereas a lubricant is going to be exactly in the area that you put it. So we have our endocannabinoid system, and there are receptors all throughout our bodies, and there are receptors in the pelvis that the cannabis will adhere to. So what the lubricant is going to do is it's just going to increase blood flow and make your body ready to have a sexual experience in a more intense way, whereas the gummies or anything like that are just going to be more of a head high and will get you out of your mind. So they're both great. Use them together.
Give them the old 1-2 punch.
Like chocolate and peanut butter, better together.
Exactly.
So, Katie, as I'm sitting here thinking as a brand and marketing person, like, wow, this is such a challenge. So as you advocate for both cannabis normalization and sexual normalization, or sexual acceptance and cannabis acceptance, how do you, you know, how do you, how do you see your daily advocacy, taking place? What is it that you do to not only promote your brand, but to educate people about your brand, about their sexuality, about some of the things you said earlier, which are really just straight up biology, right? It's like this is how our body works, and if we understand how our body works, we can leverage our body better and more efficiently, and enjoy our bodies too. So how do you advocate for both of those things, cannabis and sexuality, every day?
It's very interesting. It is a challenge, like I said, two very taboo things coming together. I think for us, it's really having a big in-store presence, like being in dispensaries as much as possible, talking to everybody about it, every customer that walks in, um, and just kind of that's how we're hitting the ground running, is just guerrilla marketing, every single person, hey, have you heard about this yet? Because I think that like we talked about earlier, the 20% statistic, that to me is staggeringly low. Like if people knew how cannabis can enhance their sexual life, I think that would be like 80%. I think this would be consumed on a 3 time a week basis, if people truly knew. But it is. I think cannabis is a very challenging industry for that. And the regulations and hurdles are pretty significant to jump through, but also really, really amazing that we have that. Our product goes through 3 rounds of testing before the person can buy it, before the consumer can purchase it. It's yeah. So that it's everything's very expensive and very tedious, and but that's also a great thing too, because then you know that you're receiving a quality product.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So
Thank you for sharing that background. Should we do the next question and answer session? Next CANNAfact or CANNAfiction?
sure.
What do y'all think? Ready to kick it off? All right. So since we're on the topic of sexual health and our bodies and being healthy, this stat for you is related to treating menstrual cramps and PMS. CANNAfact or CANNAfiction, 32% of the female cannabis consumers we polled told us they use a cannabis topical to treat menstrual cramps or PMS in the past 12 months. What do y'all think? Is this a CANNAfact or a CANNAfiction? And this is a nationwide poll of 1,018 cannabis consumers that was conducted in
September of 2020.
Thank you, David. 21 plus, US nationwide. Let me know what you think. What is your initial reaction to this, Katie? I know that this is sort of a different benefit than the one that your product addresses, but curious if you've heard just anecdotally or maybe in the research you've done related to the sexual side of health about cannabis used for this purpose.
It's amazing. I'm very lucky in that I don't have bad menstrual cramps, but I have a lot of friends that do, and absolutely the same idea happens, right? It's vasodilation, so it's increase of blood flow, which helps with cramps as well. So it's very interesting because 32% seems a little high to me. Especially if 20% of people come, the sexual side of it, 32% for menstrual cramp seems a little bit high. I feel like it could get there because I feel like those products are very effective. But again, I think it's most people don't know about it. And it's also about capturing and educating a new target demographic. Like, a lot of people that don't consume cannabis would maybe use this product.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that takes a lot of time and effort and energy into converting them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it sounds like our audience agrees with you that this is fiction, that this is too high. Most people are in the chat guessing fiction.
Yeah, I think people are onto it.
Thanks for guessing. So let's reveal the answer. Turns out you all were right. We tried to stump you and failed. This was CANNAfiction. It is far, far less than 32%. It is actually 18% of women. We separated women from the men, obviously, because men could not reply to this answer. And this is what we found out. And this is over the past 12 months. So not necessarily a daily habit or a monthly habit, rather, but something that they maybe tried. And it's 18% is the answer. That was actually my first sort of entry point into topicals. It was a Papa and Barkley topical, and someone recommended it to me, one of my girlfriends, that it's great for menstrual cramps. So I think that there is, like, to your point, Katie, about the guerrilla marketing, and there's people who word of mouth, it spreads around and it becomes a thing that just kind of like spreads out, and people learn that this is something that they can use to treat. Even if it's not on the packaging or not something that's promoted in marketing, it sort of finds its way in there into our minds.
Absolutely. And there are a number of women-specific brands, that have products benefit specific for this. Cosmic View is a great example out of NorCal. I knew when Whoopi and Maya was around, Whoopi and Maya had a product as well. So I think this is a fairly, within a small community, a fairly accepted concept that cannabis can help with menstrual and PMS cramps. Katie, I'm curious. Who are your consumers? What can you tell us about them? And what's interesting and unique about them? They certainly seem, ahead of the curve, if anything.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this product, as I said before, predominantly works on women. And as I said, men have said that they also, 9 times out of 10, men say that they also have a heightened effect, but I think it's a direct relationship to the woman that they're having sex with is having such a heightened experience. So it's very interesting because we also don't, because we sell to dispensaries, we don't necessarily have data based on who our customer is. We have a few dispensaries that we partner with. And so far, 35-year-old women is our highest purchaser. And that's very interesting. I also thought that our consumer would mostly be women because the product works so much on women. But the statistic is 80% of 80% of consumers that go into dispensary are men, and then 80% of bud tenders are men. Sometimes at certain dispensaries, they have all women bud tenders, which is a very interesting experience. I love it. So it's interesting because the people who traditionally come into dispensaries are men. So we've also started to advertise a little bit more towards men as well. It's very interesting because with a sexual based brand, we want our imagery to be really sexualized so that upon first glance, you understand the product that it is and the category it is. Because sex sells and everyone in cannabis is traditionally very open sexually. A lot of like gummies will have a peach that's open and then honey dripping out, or pretty graphic imagery. of that have nothing to do with sex. So it's kind of interesting because it's also for us a fine line of like when we advertise and capture customers of having imagery that's sexualized but also empowering. And it's a really fine line of like figuring out where you don't want to exploit anybody, but at the same time you want people to instantly know that this is a sexual based brand, or to walk by and be like, oh wait, what is that exactly? So it's kind of interesting too that we don't really have we have data based on like when we have people come in, like brand ambassadors go into the store, we record who is interested in our product. And sometimes it's not the consumer I would expect. I like to do brand ambassadors work as well, so I get feedback directly from the consumer. And I talk to everybody when they come in, and there was a man who was like in his 70s or 80s, and I almost didn't approach him because I was like, this product probably isn't for him. And he ended up purchasing it and then ended up contacting me and being like, I'm such a huge fan. My wife and I are having the best time we've ever had. So it really is kind of like, it runs the gamut of our customer base is really very diverse.
I love that. And your point just now about how so many things can influence the shopping experience, like where it is on the shelf, who you're talking to, is it a man or a woman, all of these things, which is like point of sale data is great. And it's, tells an important story, but there's so many other aspects to that story. Like, are you purchasing for someone else or for yourself? Are you gifting it? So all of these things are things that we try to get at by also having a direct one-on-one connections with consumers. And I think with those two things kind of combined, we really get a more holistic picture of what's really happening when people are experiencing the products. And thank you for letting me just add that one last comment in. I know we're out of time, so we'll go ahead and wrap up the show and say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I think that last point too is really amazing. You called out who your target consumer is and who your real consumers are, but you also shared, that it's not everybody who you think it is, and that's exactly the same in cannabis and sex, right? It's everybody, and yet we have to be really nuanced in how we appeal to everybody. So, thank you so much for your insight, for doing the work you do, especially the R&D. I love that, and really taking science to developing a product that works. As Vignesh just said, love the thought process. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. You can find more about Lavinia at lavinia.com, correct? Oh, I'm sorry, Olavinia. Yes, yeah. Olavinia.com. And Katie, thank you so much. You've really just brought so much more things for us to think about, relative to cannabis, how cannabis affects us, data, statistics, people, consumers, and how it all comes together. So thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Katie.
Gosh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And
I took a ton of notes, so I'm going to be like looking into a lot of these things too. I'll let you know how it turns out.
We'll be in touch.
Excellent. I love that.
We have a link popped up here that it will take you for all of us who are watching now. This link that just popped up in the comments will take you to the CANNAfact Friday page, where you can follow us and you can get updates on who our next guest is, when we're going live, the amazing topics we're covering, and please go ahead and give us a follow.
Right. So with that, I have to say this before we leave. I hope that was as good for everybody as it was for me. And thank you again. We're super excited to have you, Katie. Again, everybody, reach out to Katie, check out her products, and tell us what you think about it too. So again, we'll see you next Friday. We're excited. We have Brooke Butler from Simplifia joining us to talk about cannabis compliance. Check out the link below in the chat and the QR code we have on the screen. And with that, we'll wish you a great week. Thank you to everybody, my co-host Adriana and the folks that support us, Katie, and the audience as well. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Bye-bye.